Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video because I'm going to be doing the eyeshadow palette tag that has been circulating around, that was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines here on YouTube. I'll have both of their channels linked below as well as their original videos. So many people have been doing this, and you guys know how much I love eyeshadow. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to do an eyeshadow palette tag. So there are 13 different prompts about eyeshadows that I will be answering today. So if you are excited about my answers, then stay tuned. First, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I do hope you'll consider subscribing before you leave today. The red button is right down below for you to click. And other than that, let's just jump into the video. All right, you guys, we are going to start with my newest palette. And the newest palette to my collection right now is this one from Fenty Beauty. This is the Moroccan Spice palette. And this actually came in the March premium box for BoxyCharm. However, I literally just received mine 2 days ago because March was the first box that I received in my new home, and I accidentally entered the address 402 instead of my actual address 204. So it took me quite a while to finally get my hands on that box, but this is the newest palette to my collection. I haven't even dug into this yet, with the exception of swatching this beautiful green shimmery shade. You guys know I love my green shimmery shades. That looks like absolute perfection. I haven't been very impressed with Fenty's eyeshadow formula in the past. I've tried their little 6-pan palettes that click together and was not that impressed. So I'm hoping that this formula is a little bit better. Overall, I feel like this is a relatively wearable palette. Like, I feel like I can create wear to work looks with this, so we shall see. But this is the newest palette. This is the newest palette to my eyeshadow palette collection. Okay, the oldest palette in my collection, I believe, is the Tartelette in Bloom palette, and I absolutely love this palette. I probably should declutter this and buy myself a new one because I can definitely tell that the shades don't perform quite like they used to, but I just love this palette so much. Looking into it just makes me happy because I see all of the use that this has gotten. This used to be my like ride or die palette. Like, every day I was reaching into this. It still actually smells pretty good too. So this is the oldest palette in my collection. Next up is most expensive, and I actually have a tie for the most expensive palette in my collection, and it goes to my Natasha Denona Lila as well as my Natasha Denona Gold palette. Both of these are the $129 palettes, and actually I did get the Lila on sale, so if we're talking about how much we actually paid, then the gold would be my most expensive out of pocket. This is what the gold looks like. I love this palette. I was super skeptical about this palette at first. When I first saw it released, I was like what? Why? What? Who would want that? And then I bought it and I'm obsessed. I love the browns because I go for browns almost every single day, but the two shades that are my most favorite are this one right here, which is in Lime Chrome, and then this one right down here, which is in the shade Brass. Let me swatch them for you. Literally obsessed. They have green in them, anything green. So this is Lime Chrome, and then right next to it is Brass. Literally obsessed. And then my Lila palette just holds so much sentimental value because it was the first time I was like willing to spend so much on a palette. And this is what my Lila palette looks like. This one is very well loved. This entire bottom row of shimmers I absolutely love and adore. In fact, all of the shimmers in here I really, really love. And I love these brown mattes, like brownish reddish mattes. I just love this palette. I do not regret buying either of these. I know that they're expensive, but I really do love the Natasha Denona formula, and I love these guys. So my least expensive eyeshadow palette is the Nubian Mini, and I actually love this palette. This retails for $10. This is such just a cute, sleek, compact palette, one that would be very easy to travel with. If I am stuck on like what I need, if I'm like in a rush and need to just really quick pop on an eye look for work, I know I can reach into this, use these two shades, and like we're good to go. So I actually really enjoy this one. I think this one is well worth your $10 from Juvia's. They have a really great eyeshadow formula, and if you are a fan of like smaller palettes, I highly recommend this one. I think it's really good. Next up is your everyday palette, and I feel like this changes for me every like month or so, but lately, and I feel like the one that I always just fall back to is actually this mini from Natasha Denona, and the reason being is because normally I am creating wear to work looks, and for me, reaching into this, if I need to just get out the door for work, I know I can go in with this shade, and either this shade or this shade, and I'm good to go. I get compliments all the time when I wear this palette to work. It's just so easy to work with, and truly this is like an everyday go. Like I use this at least 3 to 4 times a week. At least 3 to 4 times a week. So definitely like my go-to everyday palette, at least as of this time. Now granted, days I'm filming, I like to play around with color. I like to pull out, you know, try and cycle through my palettes, but day to day, this is my everyday. Next up is my most colorful eyeshadow palette, and for that, it is going to go to the Sephora Editorial palette. This is by far my most colorful palette in my collection. I do not reach into this that often, although I am dabbling in color a little bit more, so maybe I need to reach for this more and play around with some of these colors, but definitely easy by far my most colorful palette throughout my collection. Segueing from this palette into the next prompt, it is the biggest palette in my collection, and I have decluttered my Jaclyn Hill 35 pan eyeshadow palette, and this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This has 28 pans in it, and this is definitely my largest palette now in my collection. For some reason, even though I rarely reach into this, I just can't get myself to declutter it. I do think the quality on this is really nice. I just don't play around with color that often, but I am trying to be a little bit more of a colorful, sassy gal. So we will see, but this is definitely my largest palette in my collection. For the smallest palette in my collection, it would have to go to all of my Natasha Denona minis. These are definitely smaller than my Nubian palette. And this has 6 shades, these have 5, so these are definitely by far the smallest that I have in my collection, but I love these. They're so easy to just toss in a travel makeup bag. They're so easy to take with you, so easy to just create easy looks with them. You're not going to get something super like editorial out of these, but you're just going to get easy use out of these. So I love the Natasha Denona minis, and they are the smallest palettes in my collection. Next is palette with the best memory, and this one was really tough for me. I was going between the Tartelette in Bloom and the palette that I'm going to talk about, but I had to give it to my Huda Smoky Obsessions. I, first of all, absolutely love and adore this palette. I brought this palette with me to Vegas last year when my husband and I went, and I wore this every single day. I never touched the other palettes that I brought with, and it's not even like the looks that I created with this palette that like have great memory. It's just like knowing how much fun we had. Like we would go to a buffet and we wouldn't bring our phones with us, and then we would walk the strip, and it was just like us hanging out, and that is truly like just one of my very fondest memories. We took a road trip out to LA for a day and just again put our phones away and just hung out with each other, and I tie memories of that to this palette. So this is the palette with my best memories attached. Next up is a palette that I think is worth the hype, and I had to go with Soft Glam for this. I just love this palette. You guys know that I do. You know I also love my Jackie palette, but I feel like this one got more hype than the Jackie because this one is permanent. Jackie's limited edition, and what I love about this is it's just a softer version of the Modern Renaissance. So if you aren't all about like the pinks and the really deep reds, I think that this is just such a great option for you because it just offers more versatility in terms of browns. And I'm someone who typically tends to lean for more browns than I do like the red tones that you get out of the Modern Renaissance. So this is still one of my favorite palettes throughout my collection. I think it is great. There is not one shade I would change out of this entire palette, and I think that this is well worth the hype that it gets. Okay, the next one was really tough for me. It was a palette that you don't think is worth the hype. And there's a couple, but I feel like I've decluttered quite a few too that I don't like. The Urban Decay Naked Reloaded, I didn't feel like got that much hype, but that's one that I just don't think is that great. But the palette I'm going to mention got so much hype and so much buzz, and it was almost impossible to get your hands on this palette at one point, and that is the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. Now, don't get me wrong, I really do like this palette. I think it's really nice. I think the quality of the shadows are great, but it's not as special as I was expecting for a palette that literally for like 6 months you could not get your hands on this. I do really like a lot of the shades in here. I don't play around with like Ladyship that much just because I don't often reach for like berry or purple tones like that. And then I don't use Empress all that much. Again, it's a really nice palette. It's a good quality formula. I like the shimmers. I like the mattes. I think that they blend really easily. But just because this was such an exclusive palette, and then I got it and I was like, yeah, it's good, but like, wow, I don't think it was that good. You know what I mean? Question number 12 is your favorite palette from a favorite brand. And this was another one that was really tough for me. I recently filmed a video about if I could only choose one palette from a brand. And there are so many favorite palettes I have in my collection and so many favorite brands. But the palette that I decided on was the Persona palette from Persona Cosmetics, specifically the Identity one. Persona as a brand, I really just vibe with everything that they release. They have great liquid lipsticks. I love their lip gloss formula. I love their highlight formula. I love their eyeshadow formula. I really want to try their blushes. I just have a feeling I would really love their blushes. I just love that it's a brand that I feel like is very intentional about their releases. They're not constantly pumping products, and I feel like they're taking the time to actually create great product and put out great product rather than this like fast fashion makeup type of thing. And I know that this was her first product that she ever launched within her line, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this is just such a good palette. You get some warms, you get some cools, and you get these amazing shimmers. I've talked about this palette a lot on my channel, so I don't want to like drone on and repeat myself, but these shimmers in here just give you such a high impact foiled shine. You can use a dry brush. You don't need a wet brush, and you are going to get such an intense look. This shade Bombshell is such a unique shade. It is like a satin taupe and almost has like a green undertone to it, which you guys know I am a broken record. I love anything that's like a green but not a green, or even like just a plain green shadow. I don't know what it is about green shadow, but this definitely has a green reflect to it, and I did not realize that until a couple of months ago, which just made me further appreciate this eyeshadow palette. This is something where if I lost this eyeshadow palette, or I used this up, or it broke, or whatever, I absolutely would repurchase this palette because it is a standout in my makeup collection, and I just think that this is a really great palette. Very well curated as well. Obviously, it's a neutral palette. Like, if you love color, this is not going to be the palette for you. But like if you just need like a knockout palette for travel too, like if you have like, you're going on a work trip, but it's like, you know, you're mixing pleasure with it. Like I think about like a conference to Vegas where like, you know, you are like, you're rocking your business attire by day in Vegas, but then by night, we all know what's up. Like this would be a great palette for that, like transitioning from day to night. I love this Identity one. Cannot say enough good things about it. And then I have a repeat palette for the last question. It's your most used palette, and there's no denying my most used palette is the Tartelette in Bloom. Maybe because it's been in my collection the longest, but I have 4 pans within this palette, and this is something that, again, if I'm just stuck or in a rush, I know I can reach into this and create an easy look that is going to be acceptable for work, acceptable for really whatever. And I love this palette. You can tell this has gotten a lot of use. So most used, definitely my Tartelette in Bloom. After that though, that is going to wrap it up for me today. If you guys have done this tag, leave me a link to your videos. Maybe I know I've seen this also circulating on Instagram. I've seen a lot of that, which has been really fun, but leave me your answers down below too if you would like. I would love to hear some of your answers to these questions. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as always, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.